When addressing the topic of relationships between adult men and underage women, it is essential to clarify the legal boundaries defined by Italian law. This subject, which is delicate and complex, often gives rise to doubts and misunderstandings and requires a precise understanding of the regulations in force. In this video, therefore, we will examine if and when it is illegal to have a relationship with an underage girl, and we will also try to understand where this need originates from a deeper perspective. If you don't know me, let me introduce myself. I'm Daniela Coin, a professional educator and Jungian coach specialized in male personal and relational growth. So I help men feel better about themselves and as a result have more beautiful and healthier relationships with women. So let's talk about this concept, which is the age of consent. You should know that in Italy, the central concept around which the legality or illegality of a relationship revolves is precisely the age of sexual consent. This is what it's called, which is set by Italian law at 14 years old. It's not like this everywhere in the world, nor throughout Europe, but in Italy, 14 years old is considered the age of consent. And what does this mean? It means that a minor, once they have reached the age of 14, can legally engage in consensual sexual relations, that is, with their own consent, with another person who is older, even if that person is an adult, as long as there are no particular conditions that limit their freedom of choice, and now we'll see what those are. So, when the minor is under 14 years old, any relationship with them is always illegal, regardless of whether or not there is consent. Because if an adult man has a physical, carnal relationship with a girl who is under 14, it is considered sexual assault of a minor, and it is a very serious crime, severely punished by Italian law. However, particular attention must be paid to the age group between 14 and 16 years old. Within this particular age range, Italian law allows sexual relationships, always consensual, between a minor and an adult, but only on the absolutely strict condition that the latter, in this case the adult man, does not hold any position of authority, educational role, guardianship, or custody over the person. In this case specifically, the underage girl between 14 and 16 years old. Therefore, if the adult man in this case is, for example, a teacher, a sports coach, a guardian, or even worse, a close relative, or in any case holds a position of responsibility, if he has significant influence over the minor, the relationship, despite the fact that she is over 14, automatically becomes illegal between the ages of 14 and 16, regardless of whether the young girl has given her consent. This applies to both males and females in any case. We talk about women because I work with men, but in any case it also applies to men, to younger boys. This issue of the role is very important because if you have a role that can influence consent, you can in some way manipulate the younger girl. Obviously, this too is punishable because it is considered that the girl may have said yes, not because she wanted to, but because she was in some way influenced or even worse still, blackmailed. And keep in mind that the fact that a person might look older than they are, or that a girl might lie about her age, does not justify or remove the fact that the person who has sex with someone under 14 is still prosecutable. In case of doubt, they should always, in any case, ask for an identity document, an ID card, or some form of identification. And unless the document has been forged, clearly the crime still exists, meaning that the person who doesn't ask and simply trusts what they're told is still in the wrong. The crime also exists, however, if the person is incapable of understanding or willing. That is, if a person has a problem related, for example, to a disability or a temporary inability to understand or make decisions, perhaps due to a temporary state of drunkenness, whoever takes advantage of them would still be prosecutable. It is also not a crime if a person has sexual intercourse with a 13-year-old, provided that the adult, let's call them an adult, is no more than 17 years old. So, for example, an 18-year-old who has sexual intercourse with a 13-year-old girl or even someone younger would still be legally punishable. It is always a crime, no matter what, to have sex with a person who is 12 years old or younger, regardless of the age of the other person, whether they are a minor or an adult. It is always a crime to have sex with people who are under 12 years old, 12 and under. And in this case, consent does not matter. Even if she wants it, desires it, or asks for it, it is still illegal. And please be extremely careful never to give money to a minor girl with whom you are having relations. Not just cash or bank transfers, but also phone top-ups or other types of goods. Because in this case, it could constitute the crime of prostitution, which is always illegal with a minor. So having sex with a girl under 18 in exchange for any kind of goods, be careful, because this could cause you very serious problems. In the age range between 16 and 18, relationships between minors and adults are generally allowed by law, as long as they are not characterized by dynamics of abuse of authority, particular coercion, or psychological dependence. Italian law does not impose any kind of limit on the age difference between people involved in a relationship. Therefore, even a 14-year-old girl who were to have a relationship with, for example, a 60-year-old man would not risk anything legally, provided, of course, that this 60-year-old is not someone who could have authority or influence over her, as we mentioned earlier. Let's now also consider the issue related to child pornography and so-called sexting, that is, sending each other photos or, more generally, particularly erotic messages, engaging in phone sex, especially images, all sexually explicit material, including videos that depicts minors under 18 years old, always constitutes a crime. Clearly, if someone were to receive images or photos without having requested them or done anything to receive those photos or videos, and were to receive them from a minor, then it is clear that they might not necessarily be prosecutable. So the consensual exchange of intimate images between minors or with minors is strictly punished by law, but not if it was unsolicited, if it was not sought out. Now let's make a brief consideration from a psychological point of view, because it's important to delve into the reasons why some adult men, even much older men, feel the need to seek out significantly younger partners, that is, very young girls, often even minors. This phenomenon can be linked to various deep-seated motivations, some more superficial, such as the search for vitality and emotional freshness, the desire to exercise a form of control or psychological superiority over someone much younger and more inexperienced, or simply an attempt to rediscover younger and more vital parts of oneself. For certain men, choosing a much younger partner can also represent a kind of confirmation of their own attractiveness, of their personal worth, which is often also tied to insecurities and emotional vulnerabilities. This type of relationship with a much younger girl, even a minor, can offer temporary relief from feelings of inadequacy or from the fear of aging, but clearly it does not resolve deep-seated insecurity. For other men, it might simply be a purely aesthetic matter. Why be with an older woman when you have the chance to be with a younger one? Obviously, that wouldn't make much sense. However, if the first and most important quality you look for in a person is appearance, then you'll be inclined to have relationships with much younger, much more attractive girls. However, these dynamics also involve significant risks, such as the development of emotionally and affectively unbalanced relationships, which can lead to psychological dependency, or relationships that are unbalanced and inauthentic. Furthermore, we should also make an additional consideration regarding the need of adult men who may be 30, 40, 50, or 60 years old to have relationships with very, very young girls. Many adults who show sexual interest in very, very young girls display an immature psychological structure from a psychological standpoint. They may have difficulty establishing adult, balanced, healthy, and equal relationships. And so, the choice of much younger partners, even young girls, could represent an unconscious attempt to relate to someone who is perceived as less threatening, easier to manage, and less judgmental. From a psychological point of view, a man might project onto a very young girl an idealized image of purity, innocence, simplicity, and a need for care. He might also see in this young girl his own inner child, that particular trait which is so often associated with a part of oneself on a psychological level. Therefore, the need to care for or to experience that part of innocence, of simplicity, and to take care of that little girl, that young girl, could be connected to the need to nurture certain inner parts on an emotional, deep, and psychological level. Finally, we can say that there are also people who may be sexually attracted to minors because they might have unresolved traumatic experiences from childhood or adolescence. And these could be abuses suffered, abandonment, or emotional neglect that may have over time gradually turned into the need to love that small vulnerable part, as I was saying. And so the person who wants to unite with a young image of themselves, projected onto the girl in this case, is simply seeking a kind of reunion and to heal their own deeply wounded and hurt inner parts. Specifically, for those who may not know, the concept of the inner child, whether boy or girl, always refers to that part of the psyche that holds our emotions, our needs, our wounds, and all the experiences we went through during childhood. Carl Gustav Jung defined this psychic component with the term puer aeternus, meaning eternal child, that is, the immature part that cannot or does not want to fully grow up and mature. When this aspect of the personality remains unresolved, remains wounded, and is not brought into adulthood, it can deeply influence an adult person's relational and even sexual choices. So, as I was saying, an adult man who feels attracted to very young girls might unconsciously be in touch with an inner child who is still suffering or unresolved, and he may seek emotional and affective compensation in the young partner, unconsciously trying to heal this old wound related to these unmet emotional needs. What are these needs? They are the needs for acceptance, protection, approval, and unconditional love. In other cases, however, the man may identify with the young partner to the point of projecting onto her his own child self that has not been integrated. So he might unconsciously see himself in his own child self, trying to symbolically relive his childhood and fill the emotional and relational gaps of the past by being the father he never had, acting as a father to this girl because perhaps he missed out on many things himself and now tries to give them to his daughter, who is a projection of himself. From this psychological perspective, it is clear how truly essential it is for the adult man to consciously connect with his unconscious parts. Through a therapeutic path of personal growth, he should recognize and heal unresolved emotional wounds, fulfill those childhood needs that were never met, and ultimately integrate his inner child with his adult, mature self. Only then will it be possible to move toward balanced and adult relationships based on genuine affection, maturity, mutual respect, and authentic emotional exchange. I hope you enjoyed the video and that it helped clarify any doubts you may have had. If you liked it, leave a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. I'll leave the subscribe button here in the center, and up here I'll leave you 2 videos to explore these topics further.